welcome. Many of you haven't met today yet, or unless you've met at the breaks, Mark Daniels and Emilea Mysko. I'll just give them a quick intro. So Mark Daniels is currently serving in the Royal Australian Navy. Upon returning from a deployment, Mark was struck while riding his motorbike home, resulting in several life-threatening injuries, including having his right leg amputated above the knee. Mark has battled with PTSD, depression and suicide, with rehabilitation through adaptive sports being his saviour. And Emilea, welcome. Emilea is mother to a 7-year-old girl, Kelsey, and is currently finishing a Bachelor of Education and a Bachelor of Health Sciences at Flinders University. She was in the Royal Australian Navy for 8 years as a medic, where she was medically discharged in 2015 with physical and psychological conditions. So I'll jump straight into some questions. Martin, you have an absolute breadth of experience and programs that you've been able to develop in the UK, and obviously your commitment and passion for those programs. Is there anything else, a burning idea, anything else that you'd like to see developed, or something that sparked an idea this week?
Short answer, the Invictus Pathway Programme. It's, you don't often see something that's novel in this game, really. And I gave examples in my presentation of how we're drawing on examples from the past to develop and improve those examples. But we're really just doing the same thing. But I'm not just saying this because I'm in Australia and you've kindly invited me, but the Invictus Pathway Programme takes some of these ideas to another level by engaging the student body in the programme and also the local community. So I'm glad I came just for that idea alone. I want to hear more.
Great. Well, I might jump over to Katia for the next question. So we've had an absolute treat of speakers today, talking about such innovative programs and models and approaches to working with servicemen and women on their journey of recovery. Reflecting on this, what could you possibly draw on for programs and for the Invictus Pathways program going forward?
I think one of the key things that has jumped out at me that I think from an Invictus Pathways program perspective we could improve on is involving families more in our program, and that is something that, again, Susanna Freegard's PhD has explored to a certain degree, and so I think we can work with Susanna in the future and all the wealth of knowledge in this room to work out how we can involve families into our program more. We do invite them to come to group classes, and they are welcome to come to the community programs that Mark Reedy runs as well, but I think we need to somehow make it more welcoming, more attractive to really get their engagement. So I think that's one thing that's jumped out for me. Nick mentioned earlier about chronic pain. As a physiotherapist, that's probably one of my spaces. And luckily our exercise science and exercise physiology students are trained in evidence-based frontline pain science. But I think, again, maybe we could tap into that a bit more. And I think also maybe trying to develop this peer support process a bit more, maybe in the transition phase when people move out from the Invictus Pathways program. Mark Reedy is very good at, in an informal way, encouraging them to be peer mentors for the current participants, but I think perhaps we could formalise that more. So they're just a few ideas that I've had from today.
And I recall Roger Eston talking about the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Health Sciences, talking about engaging veterans in some of the training programs to become coaches and physiologists and that sort of thing as well. Now, Mark, I'm going to jump across to you. You've had a very adventurous journey of recovery and taken on, for the Australian audience, not sure if the other audiences are familiar with the program Ninja Warrior on TV, but you've taken on extreme sporting events such as that, Invictus Games, winter sports, and I was just wondering, through trying some of these challenges in your journey of recovery as an amputee with post-traumatic stress, tell us a bit about what has driven you and led you on this pathway.
So from the start, I woke up in a coma 3 days after returning from deployment with a broken neck, 11 broken ribs, punctured lung, ruptured kidney, my heart was grazed, ruptured femoral artery. My fib and tib have been completely destroyed. I went through 2 amputations. I've got pins and rods all through me. I died 3 times, went through 65 units of blood, and I was in a coma for 10 days. So I woke up out of that coma and I'm like, what the hell has just happened? They told me my leg had gone, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to be an amputee. I thought it was going to be a burden on society. So I made the choice to commit suicide. I tried to rip all my breathing tubes out. That way I wasn't going to be a burden on anyone else. It was the easiest way out, and it's what I wanted. I was handcuffed to the bed for 3 days straight, and then my captain actually put me in touch with Paul DeGalda, the Navy clearance diver. And Paul pretty much set me up for who I am today. He said, people are going to tell you what you can and can't do for the rest of your life. Tell them all to piss off. You define your own limits. Your limits don't define you. From there, I then got all the medication and started pushing as hard as I could. I started researching to see what I could do. I could find out about the Invictus Games, and I wanted to be part of that. So I started training for the Invictus Games, and that was my lifelong goal, was I was going to do this. I always wanted to make the Olympics, but yeah, normal people don't go to the Olympics. But I had to step back from defense, and I was told to focus on my career and not my rehabilitation. So I missed out on the 2017 games, but luckily enough, I was able to go in 2018. And we won the gold medal against England, which happened to be making a tradition of that in rugby. So yeah, I got the gold medal in the rugby and bronze in the rowing. And then I wanted to do Ninja Warrior. People always want to tell you what you can't do when you have a disability. No one wants to tell you what you can do. And I know there's a whole generation of kids growing up without a role model. After season 2 in Ninja Warrior, they were sending all the perfectly able-bodied people to the hospitals to work with the kids. And I was like, you've got someone here with a disability that's just as good as these able-bodied people. So when I went back for season 3, they actually really capitalized on that, and they learned about it. The amount of difference I've been able to make, and like in the community, working with people with disabilities, if you gave me the choice to take my leg back, I would not take it. But what I also realized is, like David was saying before, is this person I've been built up on social media and this role model, I couldn't have a bad day. And this year has actually been my most trying year. The PTSD has got a lot worse. I hadn't been seeking help because I didn't know how to have a bad day. I didn't let myself have a bad day. And my body's fallen apart. I'm going in for my 15th surgery tomorrow, which is why I'm in a wheelchair instead of on a prosthetic. So it's really been about learning to forgive myself and how I get through it myself. So it's been a big year of personal growth. But it's going to be really good next year, helping veterans and discharging out of Navy.
Thank you. And having personally witnessed your efforts at the True Grit, which is kind of like a boot camp, crawling through the mud kind of activity we do down here, and I did it myself, and you put me to shame, so which probably wasn't easy, wasn't hard, I mean. Emily, now tell us a bit about your journey. You've done all these amazing things. You've competed in Invictus. You've won gold medals. You're a mum. You're a student. You're a partner. I understand you're about to try and take on honours as well. Tell us a bit about your journey and what's made the difference for you in recovery.
Thanks, Karen. So as you said, I was medically discharged in 2015, and even leading up to that discharge, I was very lost. I was very broken, physically, mentally, and I was kind of pretty much kicked out, is the way I look at it. I was shown the back door. I didn't have support. I had to go on and have multiple foot surgeries, and I was thrown in psychiatric hospital time and time again, and there was just no recovery for it. It was just something like a revolving door that I just kept going through, and I had no support, and I had this young child by myself, and my mum and my dad were trying really hard to support me, but you know, there's only so much they can do if I can't even help myself, and I didn't know how to help myself. And it wasn't until the end of 2017, my psychologist, who's actually in the room right now, put me in touch to Mark Reedy onto the program, and first I didn't want to be part of it. I didn't see myself as a veteran. I spent 8 years in, I was kicked out, I never went to a war zone, and you know, being female, I just never saw myself as a veteran. I didn't want to engage in the veteran space. I didn't want to engage with people, you know. I didn't see a tomorrow. Yes, I was in uni. I started uni in 2015, but I couldn't see myself even finishing uni at that stage. I didn't think I'd be alive to finish uni. And I finish next week. Thank you. But, you know, I got onto Mark and I was really hesitant to liaise with that. But, you know, Mark is this person that is so persistent. He's so passionate about what he does, and he would not take no for an answer. He made sure he connected with me, that he made that personal connection. So I went on to this information session for the Invictus Pathways program, and I engaged with veterans. I went on to meet this community of people, to become part of this excellent program, and just built on that. And so my personal growth has been going from the beginning of last year. And as we've heard today, like, it's all about perception and that, you know, redefining yourself. And I've really taken that on board in this last 2 years about just, yes, I'm broken in different parts, but that doesn't have to define me. And, you know, my perception now is I'm going to use what has happened to me and my experiences to help others. I'm about to finish a Bachelor of Education in Health Science. The intent was to be an educator. But now I was scouted to do honours, to do a honours degree in physical activity, health and sport, which I've gladly accepted. And then I'm hoping to take that on board, move forward, and actually hopefully get into research and help on the side of mental health and the development of helping people move forward, and especially my passion is youth.
So we didn't kill you with all the research stats yesterday.
It's really informative, actually. Oh, and a little plug, I have done STAIR. I've recently completed John's STAIR program recently, which you heard about today, and that was also a very big defining moment in my life.
Awesome. Now, Josh, the Boulder Crest Institute and the programs focused on post-traumatic growth will, I think, have inspired many of us here today. What have been some of your biggest challenges, and what are your major goals over the next 5 years?
Sure. So I think, you know, the biggest challenge in our broader vision as an organization is we focus on developing, deliberate study, and scaling post-traumatic growth-based programs. So the first is demand. I mean, everywhere we go, every time we meet with someone, you know, can you build a program for high school kids, for first responders? And it's, you know, it's a sad statement about the world we live in, especially in the U.S. from a suicide perspective, is just drastic challenges in every single community and every single spectrum. And I think that's connected to the second, which is, I think a personal frustration is the false sense of certainty related to these evidence-based treatments that far too often don't work for people. So people go through a lot of difficult treatments and then don't end up meaningfully better off. And I think that, and I hear it in this room, I don't hear it in a lot of others, especially back in the US, is like, we don't know what works. We don't have the answers. And so if that's true, then we really need to consider what those look like. The extension of that, however, is the pseudoscience world. If there's lots and lots of things happening, and so when you talk and you're not evidence-based, so to speak, you're grouped in with all the other people who do solid, sober things and then kind of not so solid things. And I think the last is what David spoke about, which is the perspective and the language and this. We've pathologized struggle in our world, and I think when we do that, it makes it really difficult to speak apples to apples with folks about what's actually happening. And so I think all of those things inform like the plan and where we're going, which really has two components to it. One is certainly to expand what we're doing, which is the programmatic. So I didn't mention earlier, but not only do we have an individual program for combat veterans and first responders, we've been doing a spouse program, a family program, a couples program. So to expand to different kind of families of programs. And then the second part is really scaling what we've learned in the process, both in terms of training for mental health professionals about post-traumatic growth, which from a client perspective, if someone walks into your office and you say, I'm here to help you learn how to grow, it creates a very different incentive structure for someone who's willing to do things that are harder than they might want to be doing. And the other piece of this is like I mentioned earlier, I mean, systems give you the results they're perfectly designed to create. And so when you look at the statistics that Miranda talked about, especially on the military side, it's like we have got to fix what's happening in these cultures because they're creating problems. And so for us, in that context, we consider PTSD to be a leadership issue, more so than a mental health issue. So for us, that's going in and training leaders and understanding mental health, understanding themselves, understanding emotional intelligence, because if they can't lead themselves, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to lead other people. And then we're just going to end up shunting people aside when they struggle into warrior transition units and other places where we really destroy people's identity and sense of self. So we have, I can say I will do this the rest of my life, and I still think I'll be able to do a fraction of the work that needs to get done, but I think all of us pushing in the same direction, we can really change a lot of people's lives and change people's perspectives of themselves.
Thank you, and I'm personally very grateful for some of the thought leaders in our community that are here around the room to listen and learn and see models like this. Now, David, you've had quite the journey and lived experience as a soldier, bullet in the chest, PTSD, growth and recovery, being not just a colleague but a mate of our favourite down under, our royal Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, and developing sporting programs with him, including the Invictus Games and the Endeavour Fund programs that have engaged literally thousands of veterans around the world to use sport for recovery. What's been your personal experience, and why do you think sport is so powerful on that journey of recovery?
Okay, so that thing's flashing at me, so I'll be as quick as I can be. But two things on that, and just listening to these guys down here and drawing from my own experience, what seems really evident is that quite often when you're at quite a low ebb, you just need that one person who's going to show you the example or push you towards a cool program or an opportunity, and that might be all you need. So the so what's from that. Firstly, as individuals, I think we've got a responsibility as veterans to role model that and drag other people along with us. So that's the first thing from that. And the second is there needs to be those vehicles in place. So things like the Invictus Pathways program, or the Sports Recovery program, or the Endeavour Fund, all these things that are in place, so that there is somewhere where we can push those guys. The second thing, the final thing that I'll talk about, because as I say, that thing is flashing at me, is, and Martin touched on this briefly, looking at the social, the psychological, and the physical aspects of injury. What I've learned is that it doesn't matter what your injury is. You could have been knocked off your motorbike. You could have been, injured in war. You could develop cancer. It doesn't matter what that is. There will always be a social, a psychological, and a physical aspect to that injury or condition. And the perfect tool to help accelerate recovery for those, in my mind, is sport, because physically, if you're active, it doesn't matter what your injury is. If you're being active within the limits of that injury and sensibly doing so, just by being active, you're going to heal better. Psychologically, you're going to feel better. Your brain's going to be full of endorphins. You've got goal setting. All this sort of business is good for you psychologically. And socially, you know what? You've got to get out the door. That you can't sit at home, watching Trisha with a can of cider. You've got to go out, because the lads are depending on you to be at that training session and to be involved in this and that. So, it's going to hit all those things. So I just think sport's just really good medicine.
Thank you. Yeah, someone once said to me, the friend of depression is staying still, staying immobile.